And for anybody who's having to miss it, great. All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon on this gorgeous day. I think most of you are in Colorado. And I'm Sue Mackey. I am the board president for the Funeral Consumer Society of Colorado. Fellow board members on the call are Lee Abner and Sandra, who is our speaker today. Traditionally, the funeral consumer societies across the country have not had funeral directors on their boards, considering it a conflict of interest. And that was mainly because we had contract providers. So we were set up as a group that would refer people to particular funeral providers at the time of death, if they were members, to receive a discount on their funeral. And as I think all of you probably have to know by now, we dropped that system several years ago so that we can become more funeral consumer friendly by giving you the tools to be able to make your own choices around what funeral home you might want to use. So Lee and I met Sandra just to meet her because we try to connect with some of the funeral directors around the area. And we're very impressed with her and her ethics from where she's coming from as a funeral director, and ended up asking her to join the board. And it was a stellar decision on all parts, I think, because she knows the industry. Those of us on the board read and educate ourselves, but we don't have hands-on experience. And so Sandra brings that to us. So we're thrilled to have her being our presenter today to talk about the funeral industry, how to be a very well-educated consumer, how to protect yourself, how to navigate the system. There are a lot of good people out there, and there are people who will take advantage of you at a time when you're uniquely vulnerable, as they say. One more thing before we open up the floor to Sandra is I'm hoping that people are getting the word that we have dropped our membership dues that we've always collected. So people who have been members with us have either been lifetime members if they signed up before 1963, or they have been paying dues of it was $5 every year, and it's been $10 every year, payable 20 bucks every 2 years. We've been working with that system and tracking who's paid their dues and who still owes their dues and blah 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 for all these years. And we just made a board decision that once you're a member, you're a lifetime member. And we know that if you feel like you receive value from what we have to offer, you'll make a donation once in a while. That being said, the webinars are free, and that's fine too. So we're excited about that change. Part of it is it's going to be a lot less administrative stuff on our end with an all-volunteer board of keeping track of who paid, who didn't pay. But we're finding that that people are pleased with what we're doing, and so we're surviving our little budget by just donations from good-hearted people. So tuck that away. If you aren't a member and you want to become a member, it's $35 one time. You'll receive our handbook, which has got 60 plus pages of chock full of information, and all on end of life planning that has been written by our volunteers years ago, and in the process of being updated again. But the way the membership works now is if you just want to be a member of Funeral Consumer Society because you believe in what we do and you support us, for $35, you'll get this handbook and you'll become a lifetime member. So thank you ahead of time to anybody who feels called to do that. And I am going to turn the floor over to Sandra because she's got lots to tell us today.
It's a big day. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sandra Abbott. I am the owner-operator of Abbott Funeral Services in Aurora, Colorado. I also have the privilege of serving as board education for the Funeral Consumer Society of Colorado. I'm here today to speak to you about ways that you can make your funeral more affordable and the pitfalls that you could find along the way. Okay. So the original thing you need to know when you call a funeral home is that they must present you with a general price list. Whether it's over the phone or by email or anything else, the first thing they have to do is give you a general price list. That is required by the Federal Trade Commission, and it must list all of their services that they do offer. A funeral home may not charge you more than what is on the consumer or on their general price list. So if you're interested in a casket price list, they must present that. If you're interested in an outer burial container, such as a burial vault, they must present that. You are under no obligation as a consumer to identify yourself at any time. You don't have to give them your phone number. You don't have to give them your name, your email address, or any other information about you. The only thing they can ask you is pertinent questions relating to the decedent themselves, such as normally it'll be a question like, is your loved one under so many pounds? Normally the cutoff is 300. The reason they ask is at 300 pounds, we have to change, if you're doing a cremation, the type of casket we're using for the cremation itself. Or if we have to send a second driver because of logistics of having to move that person. Beyond that, you don't have to identify anything. You don't have to go into a funeral home to get a death certificate, in order to get a general price. What about first call pickup? That's a good question. So that falls under what's called price packaging. Now, most funeral homes will offer you a package. Now, the pitfall on that one is some funeral homes will quote you a package. They'll say, my cost on a direct cremation is $1,500, let's say that. But it doesn't include the transportation. That's where that GPL comes in vitally important. That general price list will tell you everything that is included in that package. And a lot of times funeral homes will add that on in the end. So ask when you call, and let's say you are asking for a direct cremation or a cremation without a service, does this include the transportation costs? That is one of the biggest things that most funeral homes do not include in their packages. So make sure that is a question. So that's a very good question.
And then there's a surprise bill.
Correct. Towards the end, you're not so they must answer, in any funeral home you call has to answer you with accurate pricing. If for some reason, this just happened to me recently, I had a call come in and I had a misquote of my own pricing on my own website. My fault, entirely my fault. They have to, if they've seen it, they should honor that price. Even if it's their fault. It's 100%. It was offered, they should honor that price. If not, that's a situation where you get DORA involved, Department of Regulatory Agencies. The GPL is yours to take home. You are not required to give it back. That is for your information, and every funeral home should hand you one when you walk in. So if you have questions about that. So, questions for your funeral home. What services are handled on site versus outsourced? When you have time, will you talk about how to pick a funeral home? How much time? Oh, perfect. Yes, of course, Gary. Let's do that now. I like to take questions and answer them immediately. So, how do you pick a funeral home? How much time do I have to say my wife will die in a few days or has just died? Okay, there's a couple of different options here. Now, if you have to pick a funeral home quickly because they're, say, in a hospice situation, they're in your house, things like this, I would suggest asking the coroner, if you haven't picked one, if they have a funeral home that does a courtesy pickup. Some funeral homes do. Now, a courtesy pickup is the funeral home comes out, they pick up your loved one, and they store them until a time that you've picked a funeral home. We'll just pull somebody out of the air because it's big. We'll say Olinger picks them up. You are not obligated to stay with Olinger. free to choose any funeral home you want after that. And when you have time, let's say, okay, how much time do I have when my wife has died? You have up to 10 days by Colorado state law. If you choose not to do any services or do anything with a funeral home after 10 days, the county will step in. They will give you a couple of extra days, and then after that, they take over and they become a ward of the state. And the state will pay for funeral services for that person. Normally, it's a cremation, and then the funeral home holds on to them for 120 days and then takes them to Mount Olivet. So that's considered an abandonment case. Doesn't happen very often, but it does. And if for some reason the coroner sends them and they do use a courtesy pickup, you are not obligated to pay that funeral home for the transportation from said place to that funeral home. That is considered a courtesy. Thus, you are not obligated to pay that funeral home. You will be obligated to pay the next funeral home to pick up from that funeral home if you choose to change funeral homes. Does that make sense to you? Perfect. Okay. So services handled on site versus outsourced. That's a new one that Colorado has now stated. If your funeral home uses a third party for transportation, cremation, embalming, storage, it must be listed on their general price list website or anywhere the public can come in contact with it. Along with that will be the name of the place, what service they perform for the funeral home, and the address of that facility. That way you always know what's happening, whether it's a transportation company or a cremation company. Now, I'll tell you that Arapahoe County does not allow crematories within the county limits. That ended in 1986. So any funeral home that's in Arapahoe County does not have a crematory. Most funeral homes don't have crematories because of the regulation anymore, because they have to be in an industrial I-1A industrial area. So most crematories are located in Commerce City or North Denver, the majority of them. So most funeral homes you will see will have a phrase, I'm going to pull my GPL just so I have it, that states something along the lines of uses subcontractors or agents for routinely handling or caring for human remains. And then that name will be listed there so you know where your loved one is going to go. Which items are legally required by the state or cemetery? Now, if you're going to bury, most cemeteries in the state of Colorado are going to require a casket and a burial vault. Now, this is where it gets tricky. Burial vaults. You can buy it through the funeral home, but 9 times out of 10, when you purchase a plot, the vault is included in the cost of the plot. The cemetery, though, is going to do what they call opening and closing costs. That's a charge that most people are not prepared for. The opening and closing cost, of course, is just what it sounds. That would be to open the grave for placement and then closing the grave back up and resodding. Average right now is going to be run between $3,000 and $6,000 for opening and closing, depending on the cemetery, right?
Wow.
And that's a big surprise most people are not aware of. You can buy the plot, and the plot sounds great. It's the opening and closing that's a killer sometimes.
Wow.
If you are doing a direct burial, though, embalming is not required. As a matter of fact, if you have no intention of ever having a service outside of the funeral home, embalming is not a requirement. The only time embalming is required is if you are crossing state lines and it's not a religious reason, and you can cross state lines using dry ice, but it has to be replenished as you go. So there's a time frame on that. Embalming can be done if the funeral home does not have refrigeration available. And they must inform you that they're going to embalm, but they cannot charge you for that embalming if it's due to the fact that they have lack of refrigeration. So you can save yourself money. Say my loved one dies at home. Do you mean I have 10 days to choose a funeral home? What happens to the body? So absolutely, Lee, that's a good question. She says, I'm confused about the 10 days you mentioned. Say my loved one dies at home. Do you mean I have 10 days to choose a funeral home? What happens to the body? Good question. So let's say your loved one goes to the coroner's office. The coroner's going to hold on to them for that period of time. They are going to call you probably every day for that 10 days to ask if you have picked a funeral home. On the 10th day, they're going to tell you, we are going to contact the state to begin paperwork. If for some reason you decide not to return their phone calls or anything else, they will move forward very quickly. And on that, they will say, we've already started the paperwork. You can still get in hold. And let's say you do go into that 10 days. You can contact the county and stop that. You just call your particular county, say Arapahoe County, and say, I want to be involved. But they're going to give you a time frame and then move forward without you. Okay. And then if you do abandon your body, any funeral costs are not your responsibility at that point. They're a state responsibility. And we'll go over that as far as assistance comes up here pretty quick. Because that's an availability to those of you that may not have the funds to pay for your own funeral or your loved one's funeral. That's something. Now, a big pitfall I see many people make a mistake on is funeral homes offer price packaging. We talked about that. A cremation package includes all of these things. Those packages are generally highly discounted over an a la carte price. So sometimes it is better to take a package and just not accept certain parts of it that you don't want over dropping to a la carte packages. Like in the case of my particular funeral home, a direct cremation, if you were to do it a la carte, is $910 different. Take the package. And if there's something on that package you don't want, just don't take it. So like if you don't like a temporary urn and you're going to have your own urn, that's fine. Just when the urn shows up, say, I don't want it. Because if you take it out, you revert to a la carte price packaging, they'll up the prices on you. So take the package a lot of times. Can you purchase a casket or an urn elsewhere? Absolutely. No funeral home in the state can reject any casket or urn you buy from anywhere. They can't charge you a handling fee. They can't do anything of the sort. The only thing a funeral home can do is request, if it's like a casket, they can request your presence at the time of its delivery to ensure any damage that was done in shipment. But they will not warranty anything that you package. So if you buy a casket from Titan and Titan ships the casket here, most funeral homes will ask that you're there when it arrives to make sure that there's no dents, scratches, or head panels missing or things of the sort. But they cannot deny you a casket, jewelry, or urn. They just won't warranty it. The best way to save money on a funeral is do a direct cremation. Obviously, that's going to be the cheapest option at any funeral home you choose. What a direct cremation means is we pick up the person, we file all the paperwork, we do the cremation, we return the cremated remains. I highly, highly encourage this one. It gives you more time to set your memorial around your schedule, and most times it will save you a ton of money from not having to pay the chapel or the funeral home for use of their chapel or whatever. So I think that's a high one for you. You can add things to it as ID viewings and such, but direct cremation is going to be your... What about a death certificate with the direct cremation? Good question. Death
Mhm.
certificates are always available for everyone. Correct. You can forego embalming and viewings. Let me get to the death certificate. Okay, so a death certificate is available on any final disposition, whether it's buried, cremated, alkaline hydrolysis, human composting, anything of the sort. There will always be death certificates available. Those are available through the funeral home or through the state. The cost on a death certificate now has increased exponentially over what it was last year, to the first one being $25 for the first and $20 for each additional when ordered at the same time. If you go back in 2 weeks and reorder, you start over 25 and 20. Death certificates. Now, it depends on the funeral home on whether they will give you a death certificate with their package or they will not. Most funeral homes do not include death certificates with the cost of their cremation packages or their funeral packages at all. So just keep that in mind. Depends on the funeral home. I offer you one. Most funeral homes don't offer you anything. So that's up to you. Correct, you can forego embalming even for viewings. Some funeral homes will require embalming for viewings. That is true. So, depending on your funeral home, that has become a new thing. Embalming for an ID viewing has, unfortunately, in the last about year and a half, become a thing that most funeral homes are going to require. They do that because there has been a huge exodus out of funerals into cremations. People don't want to do big funerals anymore. Funeral homes don't like that, of course, because well, we want to sell you a big package. So a number of funeral homes will tell you they want to embalm for your safety, your necessity, things like this. Ooh, let's go down here though, Tanya. You can have a home funeral. There's where it gets tricky. Now, this is something we've been going over lately, and Sue will tell you, and so will Lee. There is a new House bill in called 26-1258. It is currently at the state level. It's passed the House of Representatives, right? And it's at the Senate level. It looks like it's going to pass. The question being that they may not be allowing home funerals anymore without the presence of a funeral director. So unfortunately, that is part of the new legislation that we don't seem to be able to get clarification on. New transportation laws for families to transport their own loved ones without a funeral director, or home funerals. It appears as though that may be becoming a thing of the past as of this year, which is very unfortunate.
Mhm.
I don't agree with it. I think that it's not our place to tell you where you should and should not have a funeral, but it appears as though you are going to have to hire a funeral home with a licensed funeral director in order to do that.
Yeah.
So that is the new legislation. And if it passes, it goes into effect August 13th of this year.
Oh, wow, that's fast.
So that's why we keep fighting about it. It's not a great thing.
Yeah. Yeah, the
So,
other piece, Sandra, wasn't it
yes.
that they were limiting transportation
Hmm.
to like an official vehicle that can transport a casket, whereas people who do home funerals would often use a truck or a van, or something that would hold the casket flat. They're making it, the wording is that you have to have a vehicle that's outfitted to properly transport the body, and that the body can only be transported to a funeral establishment, as in a funeral home or place for disposition. So that would eliminate being able to transport the body to the home.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that was always, the inside joke about funeral directors is you could put mom in the back of your car and drive her down to the funeral home. That is, as we've seen in the new legislation, not something they're going to allow anymore. As a matter of fact, I just had my DORA inspection about 4 weeks ago. And one of the things they inspected was my vehicle. They wanted to make sure that my vehicle was equipped to transport in a dignified and humane manner. Now, what they consider dignified and humane, they're not clarifying at this point. They're not stating on what it is or how it is, but it did clarify that it has to be transported to a funeral establishment.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll go over the difference between funeral establishments and brokers. That's the new thing as well. And that's where some of the new costs are coming in.
Sandra, can I mention something
Yes, of
on
course.
the legislation?
Yes, ma'am.
The people that are saying in the chat, contact your member,
Mhm.
I think it's great.
Yes,
They
please.
don't ever mention home funerals in the legislation, but we are inferring that because they're saying, as she said, you can only transport a body to a funeral home or a crematory or something like that. So if you do get involved and want to try to get that changed, it could be, it's possible. It could be that this is an unintended consequence rather than
Exactly.
something that was intended, because they never mentioned home funerals.
Correct.
In fact, Sue and I talked to one sponsor of the legislation, who didn't even know what it was, a home
No.
funeral. He thought it was burial in somebody's backyard or something like that. So they're I think a little confused about this, but somebody needs to clarify it for them.
Well, given the interview you had with him when you went on the investigative, and he stated that it was written very gray so that it could be interpreted in many, many ways, does not help. Because I have a feeling that some people are going to interpret it much stricter than others, and that's going to lead to problems.
Yeah, because it's up to Dora to interpret the legislation, right? And then write the
Correct.
regulations. So,
Absolutely. So DORA is going to be the authority on that. That's the Department of Regulatory Agencies. And starting January 1st of next year, every funeral director is supposed to have a funeral director's license. That has been changing through this time too. We're not sure how that's working out either. So you've got all of that. So aquamation was a question. So you had a question on that. So yes, I will tell you the typical aquamation in Colorado, that is pretty close. I would say you're looking at the higher end of that aquamation. You're looking at between 3,500 and 5,000 is normal as far as aquamation. There are very few places that offer it. Most of them are up north by Sioux and Lee. I don't know of anybody in Denver personally that does aquamation.
oh, be a tree.
Be a tree. There you go.
Yeah.
So be a tree, and I don't know what their costs are. It's very limited. There's not a lot of people that offer it. And same thing with human composting. It's so new to our industry here in Colorado that we don't have a whole lot of them that do it, but they are available out there.
Mhm.
Who do we call first if a patient appears to be abandoned? Usually the coroner is not contacted with a hospice death. That's a very good question. So what I would suggest is if you have a patient that is abandoned, you contact your local Health and Human Services agency, whether it's Arapahoe, Denver, Adams, whatever county you are in. You contact them and let them know of the situation. If that person is listed under Medicaid, Medicare, they'll have a case open with them anyway. So contact the Health and Human Services for the county that you live in and let them know that you think this person has been abandoned. They will start their investigation and start looking for next of kin that may be available elsewhere if the current next of kin doesn't want to take control of the body. Licensure in Utah sucks too. Thank you very much, Joyce. There you go. Be a tree is $3,950. I was going to say you're going to be a little bit higher. So there you go. It's going to run you about $4,000 with Be a Tree, depending on what they're doing there. Now, one of the costs that's, how do I put this politely? Colorado's funeral home costs are going to be raising exponentially in the next few years. There's new legislation coming through does require schooling, does require licensure of each person. I will tell you that when I started in this industry as a funeral director, embalmer, crematory operator, you did not have to have any background whatsoever. You still don't up until January. You can come in off the street, you can be anybody you want to be, and you can do anything you want to. Starting in January, that all changes. You have to go to school. You have to serve an internship. You're going to have to apply for your licensure. You're going to have to serve continuing education expenses, things of the sort. So I can tell you, as anybody who's been a business owner, those costs do not come cheap. And if it costs the funeral home more money, it's costing you more money. Now, another thing in this House bill that you've seen go through is defining what a funeral establishment is. Colorado has a long history of what's called brokers. Brokers are people that have an office. Let's just say just an office, and they hire third-party crematories. That's absolutely fine. Almost all funeral homes use a third-party crematory. It's extremely normal. The problem being, if you do not have a cooler, a chapel, or an embalming room, you are no longer considered a funeral establishment, and you have to give up your license starting September. As of November, your license will no longer be allowed to be renewed. So you have two choices: get into a building, build all of this infrastructure, or get out of the business. So a number of brokers are losing businesses. So some of these smaller funeral homes you've seen are going to go out of business this year. And it's unfortunate. And I've watched a number of my friends lose their businesses over it in the last couple of months. That alone is going to drive prices up. I anticipate, and I'm hoping I'm wrong, that within 3 years, the average cremation is going to go from $3,000 to probably $5,000. And it's just not something feasible. Yes, the funeral directors at the school are rocking. It is a completely full class. You cannot get into Arapahoe County for the next 3 years as far as becoming a funeral director or an embalmer and going through school. And that's where a lot of this problem is going to lie, to be honest with you. Getting people out to serve that 2-year internship to get their licensure when a school is full is going to drive the prices up too, because it's going to make those people extremely valuable people. And they're not going to take minimum wage for an answer. So it's a little sad for me as well. Now, the problem I see with the prices going up is, we talked about, if you don't have funds, what do you do? If somebody is just, your loved one dies, what happens if you have a package and the funeral home goes out of business? That is a great question. I'm assuming you're asking, Lynn, about pre-needs. Let's say you've paid somebody for your funeral package and they go out of business. It depends. I am not a huge fan of pre-need. Reason being, it saves you lots of money in the beginning, but I will tell you the key to a pre-need. If you purchase a pre-need, do not purchase a pre-need through a funeral home that holds the funds themselves. That is the key to everything. If the funeral home holds a trust with those funds in it and that funeral home goes out of business, you're out. You don't have a package. You don't have anybody to turn to. If you purchase a pre-need through a funeral home that uses a national company to hold those funds, such as Great Western, Funeral Directors Life, one of those, that fund is still available to you if the funeral home goes out of business. You may take that package to someone else. Now, whether they'll accept what it is for what it is, you may have to pay the difference, but at least your money is still there for what you paid beforehand. Okay. The bill has passed everything. The Senate is your last chance to stop this. I would love to stop this. I'm not going to lie to you. This bill is absolutely asinine. It's ridiculous. So, I would love for you guys to get involved. I would love to see 1 million people walk down there and say, this is not, we need clarification. But I'm here to tell you that it unfortunately is going to drive up the prices. Back to burial assistance. There is a fund that very few funeral homes want to talk about, and very few funeral homes are going to tell you about. And it is a low income assistance. It is offered by all of the counties, doesn't matter. And there is a state general fund. What happens is they have funds available to people that are low income, Medicaid recipients, Medicare recipients, where they will pay a funeral home up to $1,500 towards the cost of your cremation or funeral expense. Here's the catch. You yourself may not spend more than $2,500 towards any funeral. You spend 1 penny over that, they'll take all the funds away. So my problem with that is the prices are going up. The number of funeral homes that can be found under $1,500 is almost impossible. And my concern is once we hit that 2,500, who's going to be eligible to do those cases? But those funds are available. If you do need them, contact your local Health and Human Services for that county. You're going to ask them for the Burial Assistance Fund. They're going to send you what's called an IM-100. That IM-100 is basic information about the person that passed away. Name, date of birth, social security number, if they have a bank account. They'll make a determination on that and then award a funeral home that $1,500. And it can be a funeral home of your choice, as long as the package is under $2,500. Questions on that one?
Say it again, please.
Oh, yes. So you can pick any funeral home you like, as long as the entire package is less than $2,500. You can use those funds towards that.
Thank you. But what is the thing to ask for from
Oh, you're
Health and
asking
Human
for
Services?
burial assistance.
Thank you.
No problem.
And Sandra, some funeral homes that are at that lower price point will help you with that paperwork, correct?
Absolutely. And every funeral home should help you with that paperwork.
Okay.
Because it's in our best interest, because we need to get paid too. The best part about burial assistance is you do not pay anything up front. So if they award you that $1,500 and your funeral is, say, $1,300, you don't owe them a dime. The state pays them. You just do the paperwork. You come pick that person up. It's perfect.
Okay. And you can't apply until after the death.
Correct. But you can have all of your paperwork ready. And if they are already receiving Medicaid and Medicare benefits, it's almost an assured situation. Unless, of course, for some reason they've got a trust fund somewhere with $1 million in it, which is never going to happen, but that's. What do I think about Neptune Society? Honestly, I have worked with a lot of people at Neptune Society. They're a good society, if that's what you're looking for. It's kind of like, buying into a co-op type of thing. And they've served a purpose for a number of years, for a big number of years. So I don't have any problems with Neptune Society. I think what they do is just fine for their situation. May wait up to a year to get the funds back from burial assistance, depending on the county. Exactly. Now, we have had a huge breakthrough. Speaking of that, Cynthia, the biggest county problem was, of course, Arapahoe County. Arapahoe County is notorious for not paying funeral homes and has been for a number of years. The person that ran the burial assistance retired 2 weeks ago. We have new people in and they are catching up. So that's great. I am so happy that we are finally doing that. Yes, and you're right, Tanya. That's why a lot of funeral homes won't accept it, is because you have to wait for the funds to come through. And depending on it, they may not be eligible because the funeral home charges more than they're eligible for anyway. So that's something to think about too. A lot of miscommunication about veterans. We are, my husband is a disabled veteran and we are veteran owned. We are huge on our veterans. We love them. There is a huge misconception that the VA pays for your funeral. Fortunately, that is not a true situation. The VA pays for your burial plot. They pay for the opening and closing of the grave, the stone, and the plot at a national cemetery. You may receive a stipend from the VA if you choose to bury in a private cemetery. And it's usually about $700, which doesn't go a long ways, to be honest with you, but they will supply you with the stone. You may be eligible for assistance as well if your loved one died from a service-connected disease or illness. So a number of Vietnam veterans are dying from complications of diabetes. Keep that in mind. That is a service-connected disability.
Diabetes?
Yes, diabetes. It's part of Agent Orange from Vietnam,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's causing large amounts of diabetes in our veterans community. So that's something to keep in mind. And if it is connected, they'll pay untold amounts towards the cost of the funeral. We do have 3 national cemeteries in Colorado, which is unusual. We have Fort Logan, Pikes Peak, and there's the Veterans Memorial Cemetery. It is recognized by the VA. It's in Grand Junction. So if you are eligible, 100%, get a hold of your patient's advocate at the local VA and see what you're eligible for. They will, but the VA will expect for that you pay forward, and then they will reimburse you for any funeral if you are eligible for that. Another big money saver that people talk about all the time, body donation. We hear it all the time. I'm going to donate my body to science. It's a wonderful thing. 100%. You should do it. Here's the problem I have, and I've gone over this with Sue and Lee. Depends on who you're donating your body to as to what you can expect. Okay. If you donate your body to actual science, university, hospital, things like this, they will take a whole body. They will embalm it using plastination. They will do their work through it. Then they turn it back to the funeral home. They cremate. That person is returned to you. Some of the body donation centers, you need to read your fine print. And that's the big part, is the fine print. They're only required to give you the equivalent of 1 finger of your loved one back. That's in the paperwork. And they do that because, unfortunately, a lot of times when you're doing body donation, the body is parted out. And it is sent worldwide, thus they can never get those parts back. So the parts that they can get back are cremated together, and each person is given back a percentage of their person. So read your fine print on that. Absolutely. And it's fine. 100%. What's going on down here? Okay. How many faith communities are having memorial services this day? So like how many Catholics versus whatever? You know, it depends. I will tell you, as a funeral director, there's been a huge turn against doing memorial services of any kind. Most people are doing cremations. Colorado is actually at an 80+% cremation rate now. 20% are burial. And the majority of people are opting for direct burial with no service, or direct cremation and doing a service later. That is an excellent way, though, like I said, to save yourself money. Hold a memorial service elsewhere. Do it at a park, get your family together, rent your local VFW. These things are much cheaper than having a huge funeral service. And let's say, okay, so what would be the cost for such a service? So if you're looking for a large funeral with an embalming and open casket, funeral home costs are going to run you anywhere between $3,800 to $9,000, depending on the funeral home in Colorado right now. Will you please explain the importance of having some kind of service elsewhere, just for closure and to help us with grief? Absolutely. So let's be honest, funerals are not for the dead. They're for the living. It's for us to say goodbye. So having a service anywhere is helpful so that people can say goodbye, have their moment to grieve. And I would say that it gives them a finite point of a turnaround. After this, the grieving starts to reverse. You start living life again. So the importance of having a service is it gives you that point. It gives you that moment where you know everything is congealed, everything is true. It's okay to grieve, but then it's time to start living again. So I'd say that's the big thing for having a memorial service or a funeral. And some people are good with saying goodbye at a hospital, saying goodbye in a hospice, or, well, I saw them the day before, or things. And some people are not. But like I said, funerals are not for the dead. They're for us. If you are a member of a faith community, will they host the memorial service for no fee? It is customary to give the presiding person a small honorarium, as well as the musician. They often will also have a reception for you if you want at no cost. That is a true statement. Most churches are that way, especially Catholic churches. Catholic churches, though, and a lot of churches will want you to be a member of their parishioners in order to use their facility. So, yes, you will call your local funeral home and you will say, I use Queen of Peace Chapel. That's the Catholic church that's over here. I'm a member there. They've already said yes. So what you do is you pay an honorarium to the priest. He does your rosary, he does the pall, he does the blessing. And then what you're normally paying for is you're paying for the funeral home to be there. You're paying for them to set up the equipment, to move the person, to have the church truck, to hand out the memorial folders, things like that. So that's where the cost comes in if a funeral home is involved at your chapel. Is that true for Protestant churches as well? Yes, depending on, like I said, some churches, though, do charge. A number of churches will charge by the hour for use of their chapel. So it depends. There's a couple of chapels in Denver where it's around, I think it's $450 an hour for the church, plus the cost of your officiant or pastor at that. So keep that in mind by the church. Depends on the church. So Colorado, we've talked about licensing, has had a bad history in the last couple of years. You've probably seen the horror stories about people doing some pretty tragic stuff. And I'm not going to lie to you and say those aren't true, because they are unfortunately true. In 1984, we did have licensing, and after that, it was taken away. Reason being, and I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, it's so that we could take in people from other states that had lost their license, but were good salesmen. So they got sent to Colorado. It's kind of like the punishment state. I'd call us the prison state. As of late, they've been changing that. So the biggest thing I would tell you is know who you're working with. If you're unsure, look up their DORA license. Make sure they are a registered funeral establishment. Any letters of admonishment, anything they've done wrong, will be listed under their license. So you can always go there and look. If you have a problem, file a complaint with DORA. 100%. That's what we have. And it's on all of the price lists, everything. It'll have contact information for Dora. Any questions beyond that? Anybody?
Yes.
Yes.
How likely, if you try to give your body to science, like the University of Colorado, do they accept it?
That's a good question. So, if you have an unusual condition, traumatic brain injury, a rare form of cancer, or some sort of anomaly about your systemic, like you've got a double-sided heart or something of the sort, it rockets you to the top. Most people are going to find that they are not accepted by hospitals and things just because they don't want the normal person as their person. They want somebody with some sort of anomaly for those. And if you are thinking about that, apply now. It could take years for them to accept you.
Will they notify you if they do or not? That's been the
Yes.
issue for me. Okay.
100%. So yeah, especially if you're using University Hospital at Anschutz, they
Yeah.
always respond and say whether or not they're interested in yours. Yes,
Thank you.
of course. Keep in mind
And
that.
then you need to have a backup, right, Sandra?
Correct.
Like, yeah.
Oh, Sue, I see you posted the thing on the commission on the insurance policy. Ah, see, depends. That is true. If you hire a third party that holds that for you, the funeral home does not receive a commission. The agent that sells it does receive a commission. So that is true.
The agent. Okay.
That's right. And that's why a number of funeral homes that sell their own policies will receive a commission from the insurance company that they sell and hold the money. So you'll see a number of funeral homes that have insurance agents on staff that do
Mhm.
that for you.
Yeah.
Would I recommend not pre-planning and waiting until services are needed? Boy, that's a serious catch-22. So honestly, I would tell you right now, if you are interested in pre-night, now is the time to buy before the prices go up. Funeral homes are going to hate it, but you as a consumer are going to do much better. But be aware of who you're buying through and what agency it's going through. If it's going through a national agency, like I said, such as Great Western, Funeral Directors Life, one of those, you should be safe. You should be just fine. If it's being held in trust by the funeral home, it's completely up to you. If it's one of the larger companies, you're probably going to be okay. If it's a smaller company, I would suggest probably waiting and just save your money in your own accounts until then.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, Sandra, I put in there that we, as the FCSC, usually recommend not prepaying unless
Exactly.
you're doing a spend down for Medicaid.
100%.
Or you're
Yes.
very imminent. But yeah, then as I wrote that, then I was thinking about the way that prices are going to be going up exponentially. And maybe it does make sense to go ahead and prepay and try to lock in the prices for now.
And it depends, like Soper said, it'll drive the prices down. Nothing is ever going to drive the prices down. If anybody's learned anything, as soon as the price goes up, it's never going to come back down.
Right.
So, if you're going to do something like a direct cremation, it's something to seriously consider at this point. Where they're going to get you is they're going to talk about cash advance items, things like that, things that are not assured at the time of your passing. Like I can assure you that a death certificate is still going to cost you $25 in 10 years. Those prices are not locked in. So when the time comes, even if you have a pre-need, cash advances are not always covered and you'll pay the difference.
Sandra, would you explain cash advance items to
Of
folks?
course. So cash advance items are anything that the funeral home would pay upfront for your benefit, such as flowers, clergy honorariums, newspaper obituaries, and I'm going to go over that a little bit, travel charges. If you're going to be embalmed and shipped to another funeral home in another state, that's considered a cash advance item. Mailing, if we're going to ship cremated remains, things like that. Death certificates are all considered cash advance items. So you can put money in the fund to pay towards cash advance items, but I can't guarantee you that the money you put in is actually going to cover said cash advance items. So when the time comes, your family may owe the difference on those.
Oh, okay. And um, the actual cremation,
Mhm.
when it's contracted out, is sometimes considered a cash advance item. Is that correct?
It
Or,
shouldn't be.
okay,
No, it's considered a specialized item. And it should
okay.
be on a separate section of the policy, but it does depend on the state you're in. Some states it is considered a cash advance item. Colorado doesn't happen to be one of those. But because we don't pay what they call cremation usage fees. We pay a crematory to cremate, but it's not considered a cash advance because we have a contract with them. You don't have a contract with them.
Mhm. Oh, correct. Okay.
Oh, and
But
saving money.
okay.
Speaking of, everybody talks about newspaper obituaries. Boy, I will tell you, the newspaper loves to charge you a fortune for an obituary. Save yourself the money. Do an online obituary with your funeral home. It should be included in the cost. It serves as public notice to your creditors, your debtors, and anyone else that yes, the death has occurred. Here is the situation. You don't even have to put anything on it. Just put your name, date of birth, date of passing. Boom, done. Save yourself the money. Newspaper obituaries are great if that's what you want to spend on. But the last one I did was $780 I ran for one day. So yeah, save yourself the money and go through the funeral home if you can. Just something to consider. Consider doing your own memorial folders, buying your own register book, things of that sort to save yourself money if you're going to do a memorial service. You don't have to have the funeral home do it. You can 100% make your own video. You can do your own slideshows. You can do your own stuff. You don't have to pay the funeral home for that.
Mhm.
And a lot of times that'll save you hundreds of dollars. I did not do any obit for my mother 18 months ago. Was it bad? Not necessarily. No, Cynthia, it's not. All it does is, if you remember, and some of you will remember very well, the thrifty nickel, you would open it up and it would have ads in the back and it would say such things as, so and so passed away and I am not liable for their debts.
Oh, I don't remember.
That's basically what an obituary does, is it takes your name off an estate. It says, like, if my father was, well, my father did pass away, but it says, Mr. Dan Miller died on this day. As my daughter, I am not liable for his debts. Boom. So just something to consider. And normally it's for people that have credit issues and credit card companies that come after you. An obituary serves as notices of the day of their death, so they can't retroactively charge you for things they're not responsible for.
Sandra, can you mention legacy.com?
Legacy, oh boy. Me and Legacy have a bad tenuous relationship. Legacy takes every obituary ever posted within the United States and they steal it and put it on their website. Verbatim, word for word. And they
Oh,
do it for flower sales. So the minute I
seriously?
post an obituary on my funeral home, it will show up on Legacy within 6 hours. If I delete it, it will stay on Legacy. So if for some reason, let's say you do have a funeral home post your obituary, you don't want it, and you want it taken down, make sure they contact Legacy. It will stay up, and it will stay up until you call Legacy to say otherwise.
Oh, I thought you had to post directly to Legacy, but
Nope,
that's how
it
they
comes
operate.
directly off the funeral home websites.
Wow.
And that's absolutely fine. They do it for flower sales because if you go on there, it says if you want to send flowers to the service, click this link. That's the reason Legacy does it.
Are they
Spring.
also the ones that does their website have the trees? Because there's also the one where if you Google someone's name, their sites tend to pop up first in Google SEO, and then it'll say buy a tree in their memory, but the it only like $2 goes to the trees, and they're pocketing like $30 to $50 per tree in profit.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes. Legacy is the one, and it actually looks like a little fingerprint in the corner. It's called Legacy. If you look up any funeral home or any funeral anywhere in the country, you're going to find it on Legacy. If they've posted an online obituary, it is there, regardless of what state it is, what city it is, or anywhere else. They have a little scrubber that goes through Google and pulls obituaries. That's what it does. And yes, they do sell trees, but for some reason, they'll never tell you where the tree is,
Yeah.
where it's being planted.
Hey, Sandra,
Yes, sir.
I live in Cleveland, Ohio, and a friend of Sue's, so that's kind of how
Yeah.
I found Colorado. I've got a couple of questions, two questions.
Of
One,
course.
the easy one can answer is I'm 88 and my wife died a couple of years ago, and I belong to a memorial society that has one of these old Legacy, maybe memorial size, has an agreements with funeral directors in Cleveland, about 12 of them. So there's
Sure.
a fixed price of about $1,200 for a cremation and $1,400 now for a burial. And of course, you never know, what happens when my son or daughter talks to after I've died.
Sure.
What I'm thinking about doing is, because the second question has to do with funeral directors, but what I'm thinking about doing is meeting with the funeral, because you could select, when you join this memorial society, you pick a funeral home.
Sure.
And they get your information. But making an agreement with, or signing a contract, the money goes into some insurance that you've talked about.
Sure, the trust. Mm-hmm.
And then that would be taken care of, because in all likelihood, I'm going to die in Cleveland. I mean, if I don't, I'm taking a risk, say, if I am being out $1,000, $1,200. So that way, I too think, like that, you need to be aware of who you're dealing with. But what this really leads into with the Colorado, it's a memorial society, Sue, I know you have a different name, but what with you, how do people know as they get older? As I get older, I'm more aware of dying as well as living. So,
Sure.
But how do people find, or maybe only the reputable funeral directors who are good people running a business,
Mm-hmm.
how are they found? And then secondly, with the majority of people being cremated today, not necessarily for the money, it's because you can bring people in from out of town. You control the mass, for example. I belong to a Catholic church, and they're a funeral mass, so you can decide when to go. But how are you, as a funeral director, being able to market yourself and stay in business? I mean, how do people find? I mean, because think about it though. Somebody's died. You don't have a week. You got to do something. My sister died in a hospital in New York. I needed a funeral director. I called the guy who took her to the hospital. He knew somebody in the VA. He was a Veterans of Foreign War Club or whatever. He was in and he said, call Abbott, and I called Abbott, and Abbott picked up my sister at the hospital, and then I went and paid was expensive for the cremation. But that's what I think our memorial society, these groups that
I'm in the middle of
belong to can do something to educate people a little better of finding quality funeral directors. I'll stop.
Oh, no, you're fine. I know what you're asking is, how do you find a good, reputable funeral home? Word of mouth, honestly, is the biggest way. I am not a proponent for advertising a whole lot, especially in places like hospices and hospitals. I don't advertise there because I just think it's not for me. It's not for me. I understand that. I think it's big if you can find a funeral director that works well with the people that you work with. Say it's a hospice. The hospice will have a list of funeral homes they love. They're more than
Mhm.
happy to apply those for you. Same
Uh-huh.
thing with coroners and hospitals. And those people are going to be invaluable when you're speaking to somebody. If a person dies in the hospital, talk to decedent affairs. Tell them what you're looking for. And most of them are really good friends with funeral homes because they get to
Mm.
know us on a daily basis. So they will put you in the right direction because it's as much them on the sling as it is the funeral home. They don't want to look bad than anybody else. So
Mhm.
word of mouth is a huge thing.
Yeah.
And
Thank
being
you.
available for your public, answering your own phone. When somebody calls it, pick that phone up. If you call a funeral home and they don't pick up, I have problems with that. You need a funeral home that's going to answer your phone 24 hours a day, somebody who answers you.
Mhm. And then I'll throw in a Funeral Consumer Society plug for pre-planning, not necessarily prepaying, but get to know the funeral homes that are in your area and decide ahead of time whose phone number you're going to leave for your family to call.
Correct. And making that available. I will tell you, more funeral homes make money on pre-needs that are never brought to fruition than they ever make on a pre-need they sell. And insurance companies are the same way. Thousands of people will buy a pre-need in policy and then never even know their parents have it, never know their grandparents have it. After the person hits, say, 120 years old, they've made phone calls, this person no longer lives, that money goes straight to the company. That's how insurance companies make their money. So if you do have a pre-need, make sure your family knows. Be vocal about it. Let them know where the policy is. Keep it on a magnet on your refrigerator, something. Keep it in your paperwork. That's always where people lose their money, is not even knowing those exist. And correct, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. Stephen, you brought up not knowing the ownership and changing of the name. Boy, oh boy, I'll tell you, Colorado has gone through that a lot lately. Big companies here are Olinger, also known as SCI, Service Corp International. Foundation Partners, that's the new big one as well. And what's the other one? There's another third one. I can't remember who. Parklawn Investors. Foundation Partners is actually out of Canada. They are not an American company. Foundation Partners is actually centered out of Canada, so they operate under Canadian law most of the time, not Colorado or state law. And that's absolutely fine. They are supposed to tell you whether they are corporate or privately owned. And when you ask 100%. You want to work with a small company, you make sure who their owner is. You will find that a number of the small names that you see around town, where it's like, so and so and so and so funeral home, are no longer family owned. I will tell you, being family owned or individually owned in the state of Colorado anymore is becoming such a small percentage. There's probably only maybe 15 to 25% of us left. There aren't a lot of us. They've almost all been bought out, including Romero's, Ponderosa. All of those have been bought out recently. And of course, Horan and McConaty is now a park lawn company. Families need to search for independent funeral homes. Unfortunately, see, that's the problem, is I love that. I would love for people to use independent funeral homes. You're going to get a much more personalized situation. The problem is you look up the name and it looks like a nice family owned, and they keep the family pictures there. Just look at the bottom when it says funeral home, this website is powered by. A lot of times it'll tell you the company that owns them. Mine says Funeral One. That's actually just the company that makes my website. But if it says SCI, it says Park Lawn, it says Foundation Partners, that's a big giveaway on those big three.
And check the price survey list on the Funeral Consumers Society of Colorado's website, because
Yes.
part of the price list, the information that we give, is the ownership of the company. Unfortunately, we're due for updating. We did that price list 2 years ago, and it needs to be updated. So pricing most likely is higher than what it says on there. And some of that ownership may have shifted, but it's a starting place, and we're holding off on redoing the price list, the pricing, because of this anticipation of the prices going up considerably within the next several months. So it's a huge job to update the price list because there's over 300 funeral establishments in the state. And so we're going to hold off just a few more months to get that all current.
Well, with the new laws of brokers, you'll be so much easier. So just kidding.
Well,
Sorry, that was not.
We'll be losing, yeah, we'll be losing some of our funeral homes.
Exactly. So a big thing is, ask when you call. Are you corporate owned? They have to tell you the truth. It's not like they can say, oh, well, we own Johnson and Johnson. And yes, it's just the two Johnsons. That is not a true statement. They have to tell you if they're owned by a large corporation. So we get that question a lot. Are you family owned? 100%. 100% family owned. So depends on who you're working with. But, do a lot of things yourself. 100%. You want to save yourself money? Do your own memorial cards. Do your own video. Do your own service. You don't require a funeral director to do a memorial service. You're probably going to require them to do a funeral service, though, just for logistics of moving caskets and such. But save yourself the money there. And know what they charge for. Do they charge for fingerprinting? Some do. Some don't. Do they charge to take a photo? If you want a photo, some do, some don't. These are questions that they could hit you with at the end and go, oh, by the way, you didn't realize. Another big one that you're going to come into contact with, you're going to see, is storage charges. Storage charges are sometimes included with the price packaging, sometimes not. I will tell you that storage of a body runs anywhere between $35 and $75 a day. Most funeral homes will include so many with their package. My funeral home includes 5. That's usually more than enough to get them into my care, do the paperwork, and do what we need to do. After that, though, you're paying per day. That can get extremely expensive. Say you're having a big funeral and you say, I'm going to have my Uncle John embalmed and then we're going to do his service in 3 weeks. That's not unusual. 3 weeks is not an unusual term. Ask them how much it's going to be with the storage charges. They're going to quote you the funeral. They may not quote you the storage. And when you're talking, $50 to $70 a day, that gets expensive very quickly. So just consider that as part of the stuff you should ask.
Are you talking about the storage of the cremains?
No.
Right.
The storage of
So
a body.
that's what I thought, but
yeah.
Wouldn't you have the body cremated right away as soon as you did the paperwork?
If it's available. See, Colorado, you're supposed to have the death certificate filed within 3 days. You don't always get a doctor's signature in that 3 days. And that's the problem. A doctor could make it so that you pay a lot more money. That's unfortunate, but that's where we stand with that. And yes, some funeral homes will charge for the storage of cremated remains. After a specific time, they will charge a percentage per day or a set fee per day.
Yeah.
In Colorado, we have to keep our cremated remains for 3 years before we may dispose of them. So right now, that's where we are. So if you're going to leave somebody with them for 3 years, believe me, they're going to charge you storage. So yeah, storage is one of those where people get bit a lot in the end, not realizing that's a possibility on costs. So just
what do you do with the cremains if they're not picked up, Sandra?
So Colorado state law used to be that we may dispose of them in any manner we see fit, up to and including throwing them in the garbage. I'm not a fan of that. The new law is going to be that they have to be placed in a place that has a GPS location that is recoverable at some point. But it's going to be at the expense of the family if they choose to disinter some person. So in my case, I take all of my family members to Mount Olivet. Once I've had them for a period of time, we take them up in a group and we pay Mount Olivet to put them in their burial. If a family wants them after that, they have to have a court order to have them disinterred and then pay for the disinterment and the court paperwork. It gets expensive. Disinterment's going to run you about Probably around between 3,000 and 5,000 for opening and closing of a grave again. Plus court costs to whatever the judge is going to charge on that.
Wow.
So most
Agreed.
people will come and pick up their loved ones.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh, but an interesting thing, if you're a veteran and you're buried in a national cemetery and your family moves, this is a question we get all the time. I had my dad buried at Fort Logan. I'm moving to Florida. What can I do? He may be disinterred. He may be moved, and he may be reinterred at the local cemetery in Florida at no cost other than the transportation and the pulling of the paperwork. The VA does not charge for disinterment or reinterment at a national cemetery. Something to keep in mind if you choose to move somebody to a new location. Just an interesting little fact on veteran services.
Seems disruptive.
It is a little disruptive, but sometimes, mom moves and all of a sudden she wants to take her husband with her. She takes him with her. So that is a possibility. So to be honest with you, the new House bills and the stuff going through is going to affect the public in ways that it's exponentially more than people are knowing at this moment. And it's unfortunate, and I don't like to see it. And the loss of our brokers is going to be so terrible to the consumer.
Oh,
Those are your price people. Those are the people that don't pay for the overhead.
Right.
Yeah, because they have low overhead and can provide a service. That's the other thing of these old legacy funeral homes that have so much fixed cost and mostly cremations. So it doesn't quite, it hurts the bottom line.
100%.
Yeah.
And, I'm not going to lie, I was a broker up until October of last year. Dora came in and told me the same thing. Get yourself a facility or you don't get your license anymore.
Yeah.
So I went out and got it, but the difference is not everybody's got $100,000 to dump into a building.
Yeah.
They just don't. And it's unfortunate. And if they do, that price falls back on you. Definitely. Do you know which funeral homes do the aquamation in Colorado? Be a Tree. Yep. Be a Tree is the only one that I know that does aquamation in Colorado. Are you familiar with any, Sue, beside Be a Tree?
Yeah, I put a list in the chat, but our chat's been so chatty. It's varied. So there's Be a Tree in Denver. There's the Natural Funeral, which is in Lafayette. And then up in Fort Collins, there's Goes, Goes, and they're family run.
Yes,
so
Goes is one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, so all three of these funeral homes are independent, not corporate-owned places that offer aquamation. And it's worth talking to at least a couple of them because they have different equipment, different methodologies, and different pricing.
Correct. And aquamation is wonderful. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just so new that most places don't have it, nor do they have a facility for it. So those three are the cutting edge technology. I'm not going to lie. That is a good place to consider for those, if that's something you're interested in.
And there are some other funeral homes that offer aquamation, but they're contracting through one of these three.
Correct. So cut out the middleman. I hate to say that, and go straight to them if you can. 100%. Same thing with human composting. I think the only one that I know is the Natural Funeral that does composting.
Yeah, they're the only one that we have now.
Correct. Does pet death cremations? See, there's a question I get a lot too. That's a good one to bring up. The number of people versus pets in a crematory. And is it legal? No. Colorado state law does not allow you to cremate your pet and your person in the same crematory.
Oh, yeah.
They have to be cremated in separate crematories. Now, there are a number of funeral service people here that do offer them to the funeral homes. They're trade crematories that offer both. So, yes, it can be done. No, they don't mix them. So no, pets and humans do not go into the same crematory.
Okay. Yeah, and Waterbridge does strictly pet deaths.
Does aquamation, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Oh, splitting cremains. We get that all the time too. Can you split cremains? 100%. That's entirely up to you. You can split them as many times as you want. Funeral home may charge you for it though, depending on, if you want another urn, if you want to do jewelry, if you want to do these things. Some funeral homes will charge you for filling their jewelry, for filling urns, for filling whatever you need to do. Things to remember on that is if you are going to do jewelry or a tattoo, or glass, people that are putting them in glass or turning them into diamonds, they have to be hand processed to do that properly. So you will get a separate bag that has super, super fine cremated remains in it for those purposes.
Oh, I did not know that.
And if that's something you're interested in, bring it up to your funeral director. Otherwise, they're never going to do that for you. And if you are going to, like I said, get a tattoo, jewelry, or one of those, bring it up to your funeral director so it can be done by hand.
Gotcha.
And Gary's like, nope. Not gonna
You almost sound like you're dead, but you're alive, and you're talking to the funeral director, but you're already dead, and you're making all these arrangements. And the other thing that Sue would probably say is, make sure you've talked to your kids or your family. So that's really, as you said, where the paperwork is, where that insurance policy is, that whole idea, because I don't want to dominate this, but and I've talked to other friends who are in their 80s. We're aware that we're going to die sooner than later. So today, and Sue, I almost think it's like having funeral directors like Sandra involved in these memorial societies in FCA. I'm involved in a national organization too, but it brings in the full picture of where we are today, and it provides you, the organization, with the landscape where funeral directors are, so they're knowledgeable, and that's the whole thing you're doing with that little booklet or that brochure you send out. But that's for me, the important thing is having communication with my family of what's going to happen if I get a stroke and die,
right.
Sooner. Okay.
Right. And, one of the major things that I would say is I'm not a fan of pre-planning. We already went over that. I am a fan of going to your local funeral home, sitting down with them, giving them the paperwork. Take your children with you. Fill it all out. Just don't sign a contract. Don't exchange any money. You sit down with them. You say, this is what I want to do. They'll keep a folder for you and they put it in their pre-plan.
Yeah.
They just know. That way they know.
Yeah.
I'm finding there are a lot of, they want you to sign. I mean, they're not.
Oh, yes.
I'm finding that I can't really get
pressure.
some time, because all this one in Cleveland has a few, more than one funeral home, 4 or 5, but they hire people to act, even smaller funerals, that go out and do the pre-planning, pre-need, sign the contract.
Yeah.
Of course.
So it's hard for me to get some, quote, free time.
Oh, no, I completely understand. And, I am available if people have questions. I can answer Colorado questions. I can't answer a lot of state questions, but I can tell you the Federal Trade Commission and things like that. If people have questions, I do encourage them to call me. Absolutely. Email me. If you have a question about a funeral director, you sat down and they said this, that, the other, is it true? Absolutely ask. That is our job. Our job is to help you. And if you can find somebody to do that, 100%, please. And do talk to your loved ones. Let your loved ones know what you want, how you want it done. Do you want a big service? I mean, personally, I want a huge service and I want everybody to cry and throw themselves all over the floor. But, truthfully, we all know that's not going to happen. So, but be honest, if you don't want a service, your family doesn't know that unless you tell them. If you have a dislike for something like, oh gosh, as long as they don't put me in a plastic urn, these are problems. So Alan, yes, you can call me at my phone number, and I can put that in here for everybody, and I will put my contact information in here if somebody needs to get hold of me.
All
Okay,
right.
that's my phone number. And I am always available for questions, anything you guys need me to do. There's my email address. And that's my job. My job is to help you. It's to help you find the right funeral home that is a fit for you, regardless of who it is. And sometimes it's not me. I'm going to angry at you. I'm going to yell at you. No, I'm not. But I'm going to help you find what you need and make sure that you're getting the most for your money. Because this is a hard thing. And when you're the biggest thing I can tell you about funeral directors is don't let them push you into doing something you don't want to do. When you sit down with a funeral director and they say things like, well, don't you think your mom would love this? It's not your mom. It's you.
Yeah.
If you can't afford that $10,000 funeral, don't put yourself into debt for it. Your mom wouldn't want that, and neither do you.
Right.
Don't be pressured into things you can't or don't want.
Yeah, Sandra, do you sometimes have someone come in, like especially at time of need when person's actively grieving and in shock? Do you have sometimes as a person brings in a friend or someone who's
100%.
a couple steps
I
away from the
encourage you to bring
grieving?
somebody who does not have a vested interest, because death brings out the worst in people sometimes.
Yeah.
And you'll sit down as a family, you'll start arguing. Have a cool, reasonable head with you that is good to talk to, that knows what your
Yeah.
situation is,
Yeah.
and let them sit down with you 100%. And any funeral director that says they shouldn't have an interest in that is wrong. Those people are there to support you, not the funeral home.
Right. Right.
So yes, take somebody with you or have it written out. Better yet, write it all down on a piece of paper, put it in that paperwork and say, this is what I want, throw it at the funeral director and tell them this is what I want.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sandra, you've been amazing.
Oh, I think
I hope everyone feels like empowered to be able to make these kinds of decisions and feels enlivened to actually make some plans ahead of time. Include your family, because
100%.
you're not going to be there. It's not about you. It's about you. It's for them. So take into consideration what they would want and what will serve them, and in that way involve them in your making your plans. But make sure it's done so at least they know who to call and where the information is about what your preferences are.
And if you have a pre-need, make sure they know. Don't let the
Yes.
funeral home have that money. That is yours. Make
Yes.
sure you use it.
Yep. All right, you got some nice comments in the chat, Sandra, and some great
Perfect.
thanks. And I'm going to say again, I'm how thrilled I am that you're on the board and that you're part of our organization now going forward. And thank you for doing this for us today. Thank you to all of you who showed up. The recording will go out in an email in a
Good.
couple of days or so. And I hopefully, if I did it right, the chat will go out also, so that
Oh,
you can go back and look at some of the information that was flying around, because people had some good stuff that they contributed. So thank you all. Have a lovely rest of the evening, and
You as
we'll
well.
see you at the next webinar in a few months.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Have a great afternoon.
Thank you all.
yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Wow. Yeah.